Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. In Halifax, we've had our first snowfall, and it's actually staying. There's a little bit of sun out there, so snow on sidewalks and roads is melting, but the grass is staying kind of snowy, so that's kind of fun. I don't really mind. I don't really mind having a bit of snow on the ground. I think it lifts the light that is there, and I'd rather look at a pile of snow than dirty, muddy grass. So it works for me. Two books for you today. One of them, the one book. All right, let's just start. Let's stop fooling around. Disruptive Women: The Untold Story of Nova Scotia's Pioneers of Peace and Suffrage. Written by Sharon M.H. MacDonald. This is published by Nimbus Press, and I'm very sad about the cover. I don't love the cover at all. Sharon MacDonald is an old friend of mine, and we go back to the first years when we first moved to Nova Scotia. Sharon and I were on a project, a historical documentation project for recording quilts that had been made in Nova Scotia. And so we traveled a good part of the province doing people bringing the quilts to us, and we would get as much of the story as we could. This was all pre electronic documentation, so there was this huge database that had to be put into the Mystery History Museum, because it kind of that data sank in there somewhere. We did manage to get some funding to get it brought up to what was, early days computer data transfer stuff. Where that is now, I have no idea. Sharon went on to do a similar project related to hooked rugs, and I can't remember which Atlantic provinces that was, whether she concentrated in Nova Scotia or what, but she also was doing that with the Natural History Museum. And why do I get around to all of that? It's because Sharon continued to do her master's in history, and she had a focus on women and suffrage in Nova Scotia. And Sharon is from Halifax, but spent, I would say, her sort of, I'm not positive about dates, spent her 20s and 30s in Lunenburg, and she got involved quite significantly with the women's projects that were around there that had to do with housing for women who were suffering from domestic violence and so on. So she has, as long as I have known her, Sharon has been involved in social justice with sort of a leaning towards issues that have to do for women. And so she chose these two women out of Lunenburg. That's Mary Chelsea, who was born in 1847, and her daughter, nicknamed Polly, but her birth name was also Mary Chelsea. So we know the daughter as Polly. And Mary Chelsea married a minister who was very much a peace advocate. So between the two of them, Mary on the spectrum of women's rights to vote, health care, property rights, and so on, and her husband, Judge Chelsea, who was, I think he was a minister. I'm pretty sure he was a minister as well as a judge. He had leanings more towards the peace activism side of things. And so there was all kinds of crossovers with that, but they also would be aware of things like unions and workers' rights and safe workplace issues and so on. So this was all pretty hot topics in the let's just go 1860s to 1920s. I mean, of course, before and after, but that's when these guys were really active. And Mary Chelsea was very busy with her women's organization, and boy, could she write a letter. And that was a significant way to get your voice heard in those days. You would have to write letters to your different levels of government, and you would get petitions signed, and these were really strong activist activities, and they held a lot of weight. So we get to see some of Mary's letters, and then as Polly becomes more of an adult, we start to see her letters. They're published in the Lunenburg different newspapers. At this time in Nova Scotia, every little community had its own version of a newspaper. So her voice gets to be heard fairly widely throughout Nova Scotia, but also other provinces are picking up some of her articles. And so she gets a voice in New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island. Polly does something that her mother doesn't accomplish, and that is she goes on into higher education. So once she's achieved her she was so young. She was in England. I think she was, I could be telling it wrong. She was a high school principal at the age of 23. So you work that backwards. I think she graduated high school at about 15, and she was working on her postgrad work at 16, 17, and a master's in her 18, 19. I think she was in England at 19, working at the London School of Economics. I mean, whoa. She rode bikes, she played tennis, she did sailing, she was a hiker, she was a biker. She was just like, she's the kind of girl that would have driven me insane when I was at my most immature and insecure. Because this is a gal who really knows no fear. She is entirely self-confident, and just a lot of people attached to her. She was the first one in, and she would have lots of people who would be supporting her and emulating her. She was a real leader. So what's interesting about Polly is that she trots off to India at a certain point, and through her social justice work. Her education in England and meeting international students there broadens her perspective on things. So she comes back to Canada, and she's leading different kinds of committees and so forth in social justice, but primarily with a focus to peace and disarmament, women's rights. And because she has this broader international knowledge, and she's been to this university that specializes in international economics and so forth, she has a pretty good sense of what's happening on the political landscape, and sees World War I, and has called it pretty accurately as to how things are going to go, why things developed as they did. As she calls out big business and profiteers and where's the money, and those things we're hearing today. The world hasn't changed very much, but I think it's probably one of the first times for Nova Scotians, let's say, where they've heard these kinds of arguments that it's not about nationalism, it's about profit, it's about the acquisition of resources, the acquisition of manufacturing, and yeah, so for sure, where's the money? So this is quite an eye-opener for people in Canada, this perspective. And she's going to speaking events where there are other people, primarily men, of course, who are speaking on the same things. Gives her validity. That age-old, you need a man to, make you valid thing. She goes eventually to India, and she is with Mahatma Gandhi in the early days of the independence of India. Now, I'm not 100% finished with this book. I've got about 50 pages to go, but she stays with him. I believe, I don't remember who dies first, him or her, but anyways, she was very, I don't think that she was instrumental in his thought processes. I think Mahatma Gandhi was who he was, but she was there, and she saw a lot of things, and she had opinions. And so, yeah, I'm really looking to the last chapter. And Yeah, so I really recommend this book. As I say, it's by Nimbus Publishing, Canadian. And so this is the third book that I've reviewed that has to be a Nova Scotian author, female, and someone that I've had dinner with. The other two that I reviewed before, Brenda Tidemers for Mrs. Walford and Jill McLean with Arrows of Mercy and Arrows of Fealty. We have all shared dinner together. So I recommend them as humans, and I also really recommend their books. I talked to you about this a little bit last week, just in terms of, the structure. This is The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. And we were supposed to talk about this yesterday, but the lady who was hosting book club this month has the flu. And so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. And I'm really sad because we don't usually do short stories, for one thing, which this turned out to be. I thought The Illustrated Man was, I think I said that I thought it was just a story, but no, it's a series of stories and about this man who's completely tattooed, and the illustrations after dark come to life. And so we were seeing the different tattoos storylines, and some of them are early days science fiction, in the exploring what would it be if there was actually a shuttle between Earth and Mars, or what would happen if your spaceship bumped into something and it was destroyed and all your astronaut guys are floating around in different... That one was creepy. I didn't like that one at all. The thought of being alive and just floating through space until... I like that one. And there are others where things are a little happier and things are a little bit sadder, but they are all very eccentric. And I really, really enjoyed this. And then, funny enough, I went into Bookmark today because I did say I wasn't buying anybody books for Christmas because they're pissing me off with their attitude about books this year. But I thought, well, I have a book budget. I'm going to spend it on me. So I went in and I was looking around. And there on the shelf, what they have is the different book style. What are they called? Oh, I've lost the word. The people who work there and sell you books, the booksellers, each have a shelf. And so they will put on what's recommended, what they recommend that month. And so I usually go to Neil's shelf because he and I often agree on books, so it's fun. But right next to him is Patrick, and there is a new release of The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury, and the cover was delicious. It was well, I think it was just a man just because of the way the shoulder structure went. But so we've got the back of this individual who's been tattooed up to the nape of their neck. And you can see on the cover many of the images that are the inspiration for these stories. So I really recommend this book. It's another really good Ray Bradbury. Would I reread it? I'm probably only because I'll forget. I'm just so terrible with short stories. I will forget what the stories are. So, in another good 7 to 10 years, I could pick this up and enjoy it all over again. Who would I recommend it for? I think anyone who's sort of a sci-fi buff and likes an original early days classical type of sci-fi would enjoy this. There's a bit of parody and satire. Ray Bradbury's always, looking for a place where he can poke a bit of fun. So there's a bit of comedy in there as well. Ray Bradbury writes an excellent sentence. I mean, when these astronauts were floating through space, I really felt tight. And then the gentleman, there's a second main character in the book, and he is having the illustrated man and this protagonist have met each other, and they're by a hay, back in the days when they put hay into mounds, instead of the bales. So they are having a little camp out beside the hay bale. Is that what it's called? hay bale. And so the illustrated man has fallen asleep, and the protagonist is watching these tattoos go past. And so there is a what was the point of that whole sentence, Lorraine? It doesn't matter, because you can always fast forward through it. Anyways, so there are two characters in this book besides all the short story ones. I think that someone else who might enjoy this would be a teenager or an artist, because the whole, I think just the idea of these alive tattoos would appeal to someone who's trying to figure out, someone who's doing art and wants them to be animated in their way, and so you get depictions of the characters as they are floating through space. It's just not like this thing floating through space. It's got character and nuance, and someone's lost a leg, and there's a valve that's closed it off in order for the blood not to flow out, and just cool details like that. And any kid who's interested in tattoos, I think it's an interesting look at marking yourself, but with more intention than just getting, Mickey Mouse on you or something. Like there's a lot of intentionality around the tattoos themselves, and that they have a deeper story in behind them, which would sort of make the case for waiting a while until you do have some stories to tell before you tattoo yourself. Yeah, I know when my kids were younger, I said, make sure it's below a t-shirt, so that way if you have a job and you never know what history's going to bring. Maybe tattoos are not the right thing to be wearing if you're in Prime Minister. Does the Prime Minister of Canada have a tattoo? I can't imagine Mark Carney having a tattoo. Something to think about. So I have got a huge pile of books to read for the month of December, and some of them are really luscious, but some of them are also book club books. So, but the one, I think I mentioned the book club books, so I won't repeat myself on that for a change. The one I have been looking forward to all year is Goodnight, Mr. Tom. This is a British book. It's written by Michelle Magorian, and the movie Goodnight, Mr. Tom. Oh my goodness, it's such a beautiful book. Has she written? She's written also Back Home and Just Henry. So I'll have to look that up. But this is a story about a young boy who has been sent out into the rural areas of England as the bombing is approaching in London for World War II. And mom is not coping. There's a lot of problems with mom. And so this little guy ends up with Tom. Tom is his name. Tom is the older man. Willie is the boy. Willie ends up eventually with Mr. Tom. Mr. Tom's not happy about having a little guy with him. He's a curmudgeon. He's set in his ways. He's unfriendly. He's not very generous. He's just totally annoyed by this whole situation. Willie is so lost in himself. Before he shows up to Mr. Tom, Mom has really deflated him. Let's go there. He's deflated Tom. So eventually Tom has to go back to London, and that story that's the hard part. This book is not a book if you're looking for it's gonna hurt your soul a little bit, but at the end it's really lovely. But there is a couple of dark moments that Willie has to go through, and because he's a child and he's a very innocent child, it's a bit difficult to read. So if you don't want that sort of thing, don't go here. But if you can take about maybe 2, maybe 3 chapters over the course of the book where things aren't so good for Willie. They do turn out beautifully. So that's not a spoiler in a way. But the movie is just so well filmed. The characters or the actors are doing such a great job of it. I don't know how much this book influenced other books. The storyline that you see here is one that will probably be familiar, but it's, when was this published? This is not an oldie. It did win the Guardian Children's Fiction Prize. That's always a good sign, right? It was originally published in 1981. Yeah, I don't know the history of this genre very well. I don't know when was the first book that told the story of kids going out to London and having that sort of not being welcomed and having to make their way. Oh, I guess it's a fairly long-standing genre, so yeah, maybe she's just done a really good job compared to some other books. I just don't really remember. I'm sure I've read them, you know. Yeah, I can see them upstairs on the bookshelf where I'm thinking, oh yeah, that would be it. Kit's Place? No. Then there's one where the kids come to Canada because they're part of the Let's Get the Kids Out of England altogether. So some kids come over on the orphan boats and so on. And so there's just quite a lot in this particular genre. Is this written for middle grade? No. No, I think it's absolutely an adult book, although the protagonist is young. I would keep it away from a reader. I would never do that. But is it really geared to someone who's 10 or 11? I don't think so. I think it's really meant for adult readers. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm hoping to pick it up when in the 20s of December sometime, when, you know, all the shenanigans are mostly dealt with. And I'm going to get myself a little chocolate bar and a little glass of brandy, and I'm going to just have some fun. Well, I think that's it for me. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and that the people that you are buying books for Christmas really bloody appreciate it. And you can type direct messages to my entire family and say, what's the matter with you? Why don't you want books for Christmas? So I will let you go, and bye-bye for now.